Even the oldest annals recognize the ancient kingdom of the reptilian Xxcha as the first of the great interstellar civilizations. Nestled in the middle of a wealthy section of space, the Xxcha homeworlds of Archon Rin and Archon Tau lie bathed in the gentle light of the Xlax star. Once, these twin planets had been the capital of a great confederacy of systems, created as the Xxcha expanded out from their ancient home. No written record exists of this time, but archaeological evidence points to the Xxcha Confederacy being a place of tranquility, justice, and prosperity. However, this time of peace and plenty did not last. Before long, whispers began to be heard on the edges of Xxcha space. Tales from far-off planets told of an unprecedented threat, the Mahacht. The scourge of gene sorcery had come to the galaxy. While little is known about the period that followed, it is almost certain that the Xxcha were, like all the other elder races of the galaxy, ground under the heel of the Mahacht. Perhaps it was during this hopeless, bloody period that the Xxcha first discovered and found solace in their understanding of the story, the ebb and the flow. This ancient faith has been a part of Xxcha culture for as long as records last, and has shaped their path these last 30,000 years. The Xxcha believe that with sufficient patience one can, in the story, hear the breathing of the universe itself. At its zenith lies glory and decline, at its nadir, death and rebirth. Xxcha sages teach it is not the task of mortals to still or to change the course of the story, but rather it is the responsibility of all sentience to lessen the painful effects of its churning. And it was from this belief that the Xxcha's Domorkan, or greatest task, was formed. This Domorkan was the sacred charge of the Xxcha, to maintain the balance within the story, and to foster and grow harmony throughout the stars. Even under the cruel yoke of the Mahacht, this glittering vision of peace and balance meant the Xxcha never lost hope. Then, just as the story brought pain through the gene sorcerers, it brought deliverance through the Lazax. Next to nothing is known of the wars between the Lazax and the Mahacht, but following their cessation, records tell that the Xxcha were second only to the Winnu in joining the fledgling empire of the Lazax. They saw this as their chance to fulfill their Domorkan, to bring stability to a galaxy long ripped apart by dynastic squabbles and horrific sorcery. Throughout the tenure of the Lazax, the Xxcha were the most peaceful and content of the major civilizations. Ever the peacemakers, they helped to maintain harmony and promote justice throughout the empire. And even as the days darkened and the end of the Imperium drew nigh, the Xxcha continued to try to preserve the peace. They had long ago recognized the dangerous degradation of stability within the galaxy around them. And as the Age of Dusk began, the Xxcha came to understand that the end of the Lazax Empire was indeed at hand, and they began a tireless work towards its peaceful passing, struggling to facilitate a rebirth that would transition the galaxy into its next Ttepliren, or New Age. To this end, Xxcha diplomats subtly nudged the Lazax to cede powers to the Galactic Council, while they preached patience and compromise to the galaxy's other disparate and increasingly discontented powers. And as the Age of Dusk, a time of deceit and selfishness, seethed around them, the Xxcha alone fought to deflect the growing specter of all-out civil war that loomed ahead. They did not, like the other races, scheme for power and territory. Instead, they did strive ever to complete their Domorkan. To this end, they fruitlessly sought to warn the Lazaks of the peril, and struggled to bring dialogue to the increasing racial factionalism that gripped the galaxy. Some listened, including the powerful Lazak's counselor, Ibn Cid, but even he could not sway the false sense of safety felt by the Emperor. Still, the Xxcha persisted, intent on preventing the war that they knew was coming. All that ended at Quan. When the Quan crisis erupted into sudden war, the Letnev, led by the Baron Daz Arokan I, moved towards the rich Xxcha system in conquest. The Xxcha, unprepared for such blatant aggression and completely weaponless, used their formidable powers of negotiation and goodwill to broker an agreement with the Baron. They ceded only Archon Tau to the invaders, while the kingdom retained a Letnev-supervised autonomy on Archon Ren. The Xxcha, never fools, were aware of the nature of Letnev promises and the futility of the arrangement. The agreement would only last as long as the barony was occupied with war elsewhere. In time, the Xxcha knew, the Letnev would return to claim the rest of their prize and to enslave them. It was then, for the first time in their history, that the Xxcha started to create their first weapons and to train their first armies. In secret deep groves and in hidden vales, the Xxcha king sadly watched his people develop into warriors. Less than a decade after the occupation of Archon Tau, the Letnev fleet suffered a stunning defeat against Sol in the Grawl system. Only a few cycles after the battle, the Sol Phoenix fleet entered the Xlac system and engaged the fortified Letnev positions on Archon Tau. The ensuing bombardments and battles lasted almost 2 years. In the end, the Letnev occupiers were defeated, but with a terrible toll. The ecology of Archon Tau had been shattered beyond recall. What was once a true twin to the green and fruitful Archon Ren was now a noxious, blackened crater. Its forests had burned, ashes and scattered dust started a planet-wide winter that lasted for 100 years. Archon Tau was no more. The pale shadow of Archon Tau hangs like a scar in the Xxcha skies. The sight of it is the everlasting sorrow of the Xxcha, and the ever-present reminder of the cost of submission. The Xxcha will never allow such a tragedy to befall them again. Through the long, hard days of the dark years, the Xxcha struggled to rebuild their strength, knowing they had failed their Domorkan. But now, the twilight is passing away, and a new age is dawning. The Lazaks may be long dead, but the hope they once stood for lives on. The Xxcha want to see that hope realized. That said, the loss of Archon Tau has changed them. Although the Xxcha still believe in the doctrine of peace and negotiation, they will never again bend to foreign invasion. Travelers to the Xlac system will often notice impressive Sentinel super dreadnoughts, and the distinctive Xloon fighters in intense naval exercises. Although the typical Xxcha may seem slow and encumbered by a heavy reptilian body, when roused, the Xxcha are surprisingly strong and fast. And Crisis, their king, knows that for the sake of a peaceful galaxy, the Xxcha must seek the Imperial throne and be wise for all. Even if the Xxcha should themselves be forced to don the mantle of emperors, it must be done. For the greater good, it must be done.